I've been playing video games for a good chunk of my life. To this day, I can still remember getting my first PlayStation 2 and my parents buying me a bunch of random games that I used to chunk hours into. I can vividly remember walking to stores like Target or Best Buy and running straight to the demo game aisle and just sit there playing games until my parents were done shopping. But now, I've just stopped doing a lot of this. Granted, now I'm older, I have my own job, so I own a lot of video games, but I find myself starting a bunch of games and putting them down and never going back. Back in high school, I couldn't wait to get home from football practice and get on Modern Warfare 3 with all my friends. Where now, when I get home from my real job, there's no real game I look forward to playing, and honestly, sometimes I don't even game at all. So I've been thinking about this a lot, the state of video games. And with the new generation of consoles out, I do have hope, but I've come to the realization that video games are becoming more and more disappointing. I feel like I'm expecting way more out of games, but when I finally play a majority of them, they never meet my expectations. But where did it all start? What happened to the excitement people used to have for video games? What happened to all the insane lines you used to see outside of GameStop for midnight releases? Where did all the hype for video games go? Now you might hear a lot of people say that gaming has been on a sharp decline. In many ways, I can agree with that. But I would also say that the quality of games have also sharply declined, and the expectations that people once had for new games are at all-time low. I don't want to sound like a boomer, but gaming was so much simpler back in the days. Back in the glory days of the PlayStation 2, developers released games with little to no bugs. This was because we didn't really have internet connection, so if there was a problem with the game, they couldn't just drop a patch to fix it. And because of this, I feel like there was a bigger incentive to release working products, versus now, I feel like developers intentionally release unfinished games just to meet deadlines. Because it's so easy to release a buggy game and just have a patch out addressing the bugs a week later. But like I stated, if you released a game on the PlayStation 2 broken, it would leave a really bad taste in consumers' mouths because you couldn't fix it later on. Now I have to make it clear, PlayStation 2 games were not perfect, and not all of them were released without its fair share of bugs and glitches. Heck, I even remember all the bugs and glitches in Sonic Heroes where they would just throw you out the map, leaving some levels a chore to get through. However, at least the games were playable. But we have games like Mass Effect Andromeda that release a complete mess, with character models morphing out the map, facial expressions completely broken, and unplayable game mechanics. And I'm just sitting here scratching my head like, how can you release a game like this? Another issue is the concept of corporate greed, which I'll touch on a little more in depth later on, but I feel like the monetization of certain video games have really hindered the gaming scene to reach higher depths. Now I can admit this, the monetization practices of certain gaming companies have seen some improvement, but I can't deny even though the systems we have are better, it doesn't mean that the practice in itself is good. The key to getting rich is to spend a lot of money so that you can make a lot of money. Typically, to maintain something that generates a lot of money, you also have to spend a ton too. So I can understand the necessity to monetize games for us to play games. But let's look at the history of gaming and see where monetization first started. We can find the first trace of monetization in video games with a game called Archaea, Dreams of Divine Land. This was an MMO that was the first to introduce pay-to-win items that help players progress through the game faster. It wouldn't be until the early to mid 2000s when we finally saw a push for microtransactions. This was through the form of DLC, and many of you guys might remember the ridiculous amount of content the developers used to hide behind DLC. Look no further to the Dead or Alive series. They literally had $2,000 worth of DLC within just one of their games. They literally had more content in DLC than it did when the game actually released. Heck, even Call of Duty was kinda bad with it. I remember playing Call of Duty for the first time in Modern Warfare 3, and learned the hard truth that if you wanted to enjoy the game to its fullest, you had to fork up some cash. Okay, I might be slicing it a little bit because DLC wasn't that bad. Of course, being a kid and given the time era, majority of developers released games with enough content to keep its fan base occupied, so there was never really a need to buy DLC. I played games like Saints Row, Naruto Ninja Storms, and Sonic, and I never felt like I needed to pay for anything. But there's one genre of games that I picked up, and it really opened my eyes. And I think this is where video games really started to decline. One random afternoon, my mom came home with a copy of NBA 2K12 and Madden NFL 11. Now at the time I was never really into sports, so I kinda assumed that these games wouldn't be that interesting, but however, I remember finally picking them up and playing them for the first time and I was instantly hooked. I love 2K's My Player system where you can create your own player and play through NBA and become a legend, and I also like Madden's franchise mode where you can make your own NFL team and just play through the NFL season. But everything changed when I discovered the Ultimate Team mode, specifically for Madden. I remember Madden 16, 17, and 18 being the Maddens that I put the most time into. And some of you might remember on my other channel, I used to upload Madden videos, but the amount of money you have to spend in these games just to keep your team at a competitive level is ridiculous. If you're not willing to throw hundreds of dollars at the game, you just can't enjoy it to its fullest. And this is why I just stopped playing the franchise. every single year they would release the same game, making the progress you made the previous year completely useless. It seemed the game would focus more on monetization than it would on the new features, and this isn't exclusive to just Madden. We see this with many games nowadays. Look at Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, where instead of putting out a patch that addressed the game's issues, they instead added over 100 new loot box items in their microtransaction store. Or how Star Wars Battlefront 2 added beloved Star Wars characters into the game, but the only way you were able to get them is the open loot boxes. There are countless examples where companies put monetization over the player experience. It's to the point where whenever I see a new game, I think to myself, how are they gonna monetize this? Or how much of the game is available until I get hit with a paywall? Of course, to play devil's advocate, I am more than willing to pay money for extra content if the base game is satisfying. Like if Ghost of Tsushima dropped DLC, I would be more than happy to pay for it because the base game was freaking awesome. I just wish there was more passion behind video games and less desire to make more money. There are good gaming companies like CD Projekt Red. I love what they're doing with Cyberpunk 2077. I like all the consumer-friendly news they have been dropping on us lately. Like how if you buy the base game for the PS4, you automatically get a next-gen version free of charge. They also promise no monetization for the game once it comes out. And they also drop so many videos adding to the world of Cyberpunk to the point where I'm generally hyped for the game. Some of you guys might have seen my video on Ghost of Tsushima, but doing the research for the video really had me appreciating Sucker Punch Studios. The amount of passion behind the project was so insane. They literally traveled to the island of Tsushima to make the game as immersive as possible. And with all the amount of work they put in the game, they didn't even charge us a single microtransaction. But then you have companies like EA who released Madden 21 with assets from the previous games. Or like NBA 2K who puts unskippable ads during load times, even though they make millions of dollars off microtransactions alone. I hope we start seeing changes because with next gen out, expectations of video games should be at an all-time high. With us having to pay more money for video games, we cannot have situations like No Man's Sky or Mass Effect Andromeda. Companies need to step it up and tone down a little with the microtransactions. That's all I really got to say about the topic. I don't think interest in gaming has gone down, especially with the whole pandemic. More people than ever are trying out video games and other forms of digital media. But I do think that the quality of games are starting to go down. People have started lowering their expectations and developers have gotten lazy. Ghost of Tsushima shouldn't be something to go crazy over, it should be the norm. And the only reason I constantly bring up this game is because I feel like this is the only game that released this year, and maybe Final Fantasy VII Remake, that has really given me hope with the future of gaming. Well, with that being said guys, I'm curious to see what you guys have to think about the whole entire topic. What do you guys think about the gaming scene? Have games seen a sudden decline in quality? And do you find yourself very disappointed with games that release? Let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to have a conversation. And also, if you're new here and you enjoy what I do, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me. Anyways, my name is Quasi, and this was Just a Game.